Right now, if a stranger walked into your neighborhood, you'd probably just ignore them. Maybe glance up, maybe not even that. You'd finish your coffee, check your phone, keep walking. But for most of human history, a stranger walking into your camp wasn't a small moment. It was one of the most dangerous, most important moments a human being could experience. It could mean death. It could mean survival. It could mean your entire bloodline continuing for another 100 generations, or ending that same afternoon. Because for 300,000 years, humans lived in small bands. 20, 30, maybe 50 people. That was your entire world. Everyone you knew, everyone you trusted, everyone who would feed you if you were starving, everyone who would carry you home if you broke a leg on a hunt. And then, somewhere out past the tree line, another group appears. Strangers, a different tribe. Different faces, maybe a different dialect, maybe markings on their skin you've never seen before. What happens next? The answer isn't what most people assume, and it's the reason you're alive today, reading this, in a body descended from ancestors who somehow again and again got this exact moment right. Let's start with the obvious assumption. Movies tell us this always ended in violence. Spears raised, bodies on the ground. Two tribes fighting over territory like it was written into our DNA, like conflict was the default setting of every human encounter before civilization arrived to calm us down. And sometimes that's exactly what happened. Anthropologists studying skeletal remains from hunter-gatherer sites have found real evidence of intergroup violence, fractured skulls, embedded arrowheads, mass graves at sites like Nataruk in Kenya, dated to roughly 10,000 years ago, where an entire group, men, women, and children, appears to have been killed at once, their bodies left where they fell beside a dried lake bed. So yes, meeting another tribe could get you killed. This wasn't a myth invented by Hollywood. The bones are real. But here's what most people don't know. Violence was the exception, not the rule. Because if every single encounter between two groups ended in death, humans would have gone extinct a long time ago. Do the math. 20 or 30 people cannot survive in total isolation for thousands of years. Disease would end them. Bad luck would end them. A single bad drought would end them. Small bands of 20 or 30 people cannot survive alone. Not for long, and not across generations. If a drought wipes out your food source, you need somewhere else to go. And someone willing to let you in. If your entire band is made up of cousins and siblings, you cannot keep having children together. You need new blood, new families, new bloodlines to keep the group healthy. If a hunt goes wrong and half your hunters are injured or killed, you need help from people who are not already stretched thin themselves. Anthropologist Kim Hill spent years studying the Ashe people of Paraguay and found something that reshaped how scientists think about early human society. A single band wasn't really a closed, isolated unit. It was connected to a dozen other bands through marriage, trade, and shared ritual, sometimes across enormous distances, hundreds of kilometers, generations deep. So when two tribes met on the open plain, the first thing that happened wasn't a spear. It was a signal. Long before language as we know it fully developed, humans built ways to announce peaceful intent from a distance, using nothing but posture and rhythm. Open palms, slow, deliberate movement, weapons lowered or left behind entirely. Among many recorded hunter-gatherer societies studied in the last century, visitors would stop at the edge of a camp and simply wait. Not enter, not approach further. Wait, sometimes for hours, sometimes for the better part of a day. Because entering uninvited was almost universally read as an act of war, no matter how peaceful your intentions actually were. The group being approached would then send someone forward, but never just anyone, usually someone with an existing connection. A cousin gained through marriage 2 generations back. A trading partner met once at a seasonal festival years earlier. Someone who could vouch for the strangers with their own name, their own reputation on the line. This is the part that surprises people most. Ancient humans didn't just react to strangers with fear. They built entire, elaborate social systems in advance. Systems that existed specifically to make first contact survivable before it ever happened. In parts of Australia, Aboriginal groups maintained what anthropologists call songlines, shared story and travel routes recognized across dozens of different tribal territories, stretching for thousands of kilometers across the continent. A stranger who knew the right verse of the right song, sung in the right order, could prove they belonged to a trusted network, even hundreds of kilometers from their own home ground, even among people who had never laid eyes on them before. Among the Juhanzi of the Kalahari, anthropologist Polly Wiesner documented a practice called hexero. Long before money existed, long before anything resembling currency, people exchanged gifts, beads, arrows, tools, ostrich shell jewelry across tribal lines specifically to create debt and connection. If I give you something today, you owe me something tomorrow. And that debt is exactly the point. It isn't an accident of the system. It forces the relationship to continue year after year, drought after drought. A gift wasn't generosity in the way we think of it now. It was survival insurance, paid forward in beads and carved wood. Because the tribe that gave you food during a famine 3 years ago is the tribe you can walk to when your own camp runs dry this year. The debt remembers. The relationship outlives the moment it started in. So imagine the actual scene now, in full. Two groups converging near a waterhole under a flat, heavy sky. Neither one attacks first. Instead, there's a strange, tense choreography playing out in near silence. Distance held. Signals exchanged. A named intermediary steps forward alone. Arms visible, pace slow. Old debts are mentioned, sometimes recited almost like a script both sides already know. A gift changes hands. Maybe a lump of ochre. Maybe a well-made spear point. Maybe a string of shell beads carried 300 kilometers from a coast neither group has ever personally seen. Then, if things go well, if the signals are read correctly and the old debts are honored, something remarkable happens. They dance. Shared ritual and dance appear again and again in the anthropological record as the moment real tension actually breaks, more reliably than words ever could. Synchronized movement does something specific to the human brain that language cannot replicate. Researchers call it self-other merging. When bodies move in rhythm together in the same fire-lit space, the brain begins to blur the line between us and them. Strangers start to feel, physically, in the nervous system itself, like part of the same group. This wasn't decoration. It wasn't just entertainment around a fire. It was neuroscience, functioning perfectly thousands of years before anyone had a word for it. By nightfall, if the meeting had gone well, the two separate fires might merge into one single fire. And this is when the second half of the pattern kicks in, the part almost nobody talks about, the part that mattered even more than the dancing: marriage. Across nearly every documented hunter-gatherer society on Earth, one of the primary functions of intertribal contact was arranging marriages between groups. Not for romance, not in the way we imagine it now, for survival math. A daughter sent to marry into a neighboring band wasn't a loss to her family. She was a permanent, living alliance. Wherever she went for the rest of her life, her birth family now had a guaranteed ally, a place to run to during hard times, a group formally obligated to help. This is likely one of the reasons humans expanded across the entire planet while somehow staying genetically and socially connected the whole time. We weren't just isolated little bands bumping into each other at random and rolling dice on violence. We were one enormous, loosely stitched network held together across entire continents by gifts, songs, dances, and marriages passed down through generations. But let's be honest about the other outcome too, because it did happen, and pretending otherwise would be a lie. Sometimes the signals were ignored, misread, or simply too slow to arrive. Sometimes there was no shared song between the groups, no known intermediary standing ready, no existing debt to call on when it mattered most. Sometimes resources were too scarce to share at all, and two groups who both desperately needed the same waterhole in the same drought had no real path to peace left open to them. In those moments, the violence anthropologists find preserved in the bones was real, and it was brutal, close-range, and personal. Small-scale societies, without police, without courts, without any outside authority to step in and intervene, often had very few tools to resolve deep conflict, besides retreat or force. Some researchers estimate that in certain hunter-gatherer populations, the lifetime risk of dying in intergroup violence was far higher proportionally than in most modern societies today. So the truth sits in an uncomfortable place, right in the middle. Ancient humans built extraordinary systems of trust, ritual, and exchange specifically to prevent violence between strangers. And those systems worked, most of the time, quietly, invisibly, generation after generation. But when they failed completely, because there was no higher authority left to stop it once it started. Which brings us to now. Today, you can walk past 1,000 strangers in a single afternoon and feel absolutely nothing at all. No fear, no ritual, no exchange of gifts to build a bond that might save your life one day. Your brain, built by hundreds of thousands of years of treating every single stranger as either a threat or a potential ally, now processes most human contact as simply background noise, filtered out before it even reaches conscious thought. We didn't lose the instinct.